it based off of my many years as being an educator in the Philadelphia area and traditional public and charter schools in the Philadelphia area. And the model is titled ACCLAIM. And what I'm doing is meshing ACCLAIM as a Pan-African model to be used for liberation in the K-12 curriculum. This is ACCLAIM. I chose this symbol to start the presentation off with the Wawa Aba, which is the seeds of the Wawa tree, which represents hardiness, toughness, and perseverance. And this is what we have to be when we are educating African youth. Another aspect of the claim is that, you know, I also use it as a way to say act to claim your culture. ACCLAIM is an Afrocentric model that can function as a Pan-African pedagogical tool for liberation in the K-12 curriculum because it functions to counteract the false universal content that remains central to the education systems in which our African youth are a part. We have to go where our youth are, and they are in the public school systems in many countries. This modern definition of Pan-Africanism mentions culture, social philosophy, and politics with an expansive interior focus in that it includes the cultures of Nubia, Kemet, and the reevaluation of the African world via the efforts of people such as Dr. Asante. There are two general approaches to Pan-Africanism, and ACCLAIM is a model that supports the Afrocentric approach, as its central component is the African worldview. And you can see the Afrocentric approach talks about the struggle for self-assertion in Africa and dates back in time to the era before Christ. Everything African people do is not always in response to what Europeans are doing to us. Amen. We move in our own spirit, our own rhythm, and in our own time as well. And so what is ACCLAIM? ACCLAIM is an Afrocentric pedagogical tool. It is multifaceted because it allows for Afrocentric leadership development. It also correlates to school policy and procedure. If you are an Afrocentric leader, then you are setting policy and procedure in your school. So if you're Afrocentric, then your policy should be Afrocentric. Your procedures in running and operating your school should be Afrocentric. However, in its optimal implementation, ACCLAIM works best with independent schools and homeschool groups who do not have to appease state standardized test demands and teacher certification requirements. ACCLAIM is centered on the African worldview. African worldview composed of groupness, spiritualism, commonality, cooperation, collective responsibility, interdependence, group survival, oneness with nature, complementarity, and humanism. And it's that second word that really throws the state off, because when we start talking about spiritualism and doing ritual and ceremony with our students, that's not something that the state wants us to do in terms of educating African youth. However, it's really essential for their souls, for our souls to practice our spiritualism in terms of the education process. What makes ACCLAIM Afrocentric is that it may be used to instill in collective school populations, and what I mean by that is students, parents, teachers, administrators, those values that are beneficial for African people. Additionally, ACCLAIM allows for the exposure to and implementation of Pan-African views to reinforce the ideas of the commonalities of African people. So a lot of times we can't find each other. We don't know where one another are. We don't know where we exist. We don't know what we have to offer. You know, we don't know that we love each other, you know, because we most of the times we are inundated by societal constructs that tell us how to act towards one another, how to be towards one another, and buying into those negative images about one another. Well, ACCLAIM is a model. It should counteract the divisiveness that can exist among African people. So hence it's good to tell our children that the difference between Africans born in America and Africans born in the Netherlands, per se, is geographic location. However, on a majority basis, it's highly probable that both African groups exhibit and survive via possession of the qualities that make up the African worldview. And so when is leadership aware of the African worldview? And that's key and that's central, because remember, it's leadership, it's the Afrocentric leadership that is going to set the policy and procedure for schools or institutions or places where learning is going on and you're sharing information with African youth. Instructional leaders, which I'm referring to teachers, team leaders, administrators, are aware of the African worldview when they study it and use it to provide Afrocentric content based on the construction and implementation of policies and procedures that support an African worldview. In the K-12 curriculum, Pan-African approach provided by instructional leaders is liberating, as connecting African communities worldwide can assist in filtering those false universals that are currently in place in most school systems worldwide. So, for instance, beauty standards. For instance, the continuing miseducation, Christopher Columbus discovered America, all that stuff. We have to put that in place. So this is how you know you have an Afrocentric leader, or you have a leader that has a clue. You know, when everything that they do is surrounded by aspects of the African worldview. It's infiltrated. It's in everything that's going on in the school. So this is just a little bit more of what this is based on some of my own teaching experiences. So I have my darling students who are from Jamaica, who from Haiti, who from Belize, who from Brazil, and they say I'm not African. And so what you do is you tell them, yes, you are African. Your ancestors just got dropped off at a different place, you know, and you have to back that up, because they want to know how do you know that, you know. And I tell them, especially my Jamaican and Haitian, not so much my American students, because a lot of times we don't know, but the Jamaican and Haitian, Brazilian students that are over here, they know. I tell them to go home and ask their parents, how did they get here? But I have all of my students do that story. What is the migration story of your family? Very important. How did your family get here? That's so empowering for the students to know, because a lot of times they're just walking around and they think they just dropped out of, you know, the sky, and they're just here. So, and students need to comprehend their connection to African people worldwide, and we can do that by using strategies that connect African people. We got electronic sources now. We have no excuse. It's wide open. You know, we can, and you know that our children know how to work the electronic sources and things going on electronically much better than we do. And also, but something that I'm really happy that's going on is that we have community groups and people in general that are sponsoring travel to different locales where Africans reside. Again, we're still finding each other. We're not only in a healing process, but we are still finding each other. So if you're an Afrocentric instructional leader and you're accepting the African worldview, you're practicing Pan-Africanism, because we're everywhere. We're all over the place. So the African worldview is composed of those qualities that reflect the values, ideas, and beliefs of African people worldwide. Acceptance thereof is automatic to the interests of all African people. So hence its eminent Pan-African nature in terms of this model. Now, Pan-Africanism can manifest from acceptance of a global African identity. And that in and of itself is powerful. I know earlier, I wish I had heard everything the brother was saying about how that, for lack of a better term, tribalism is still have a powerful impact amongst African groups in Africa, but also in here too. We have our tribalism going on. You know, family in North Philly don't like the family in South Philly, don't like the family in West Philly, don't like the family from Eastwick. It's, you know, real locale, and we still have that divide and conquer thing going on. But again, I have hope. We're in healing. So part of our practice in the Umoja unity is comprehending that whatever happens to Africans in Mali, the Democratic Republic of Congo, in Somalia, or the Sudan impacts upon Africans in Philadelphia, Africans in Cambodia, Africans in Queensland, and Africans in Veracruz. And you say those, you know, it's shocking that, you know, African people, we're everywhere. Okay. ACCLAIM may be used pedagogically to reinforce the uses of Pan-Africanism as a tool for liberation in the K-12 curriculum. Instructional leaders who are practitioners of Afrocentricity will view African people as agents in the African our story. This eliminates marginalization and objectification of African people in our own life stories. So what do those Pan-African realities look like? We're always thinking about location and centeredness. So some Pan-African realities include African people experiencing similar occurrences in our lives. And some of these include, but are not limited to, diligence and tenacity in our ambitions to survive wholesale slaughter, systemic incarceration, and continued miseducation of African youth. But that's going on, yes, but we're surviving. We're still here. We're surviving. We have to give ourselves and love ourselves for doing that. We're still here. We're surviving. So all of the previously mentioned are state-sanctioned in school systems who force biased, so-called national standards on African youth and stringent certification requirements on educators while incarcerating parents, leaving African youth to fend for themselves, being raised by elder siblings, grandparents, foster families, and gangs in some instances. And the biggest gang that's taken over our youth is the prison industrial complex and the foster care system. I know we think about gangs as, in some other terms, but we have to put it where it is. So the importance of transmitting cultural survival strategies to empower the collective school population is essential to the continuing existence of African people worldwide. Rites of passage, character building programs, and business skill development are necessary in these days and times of faltering global economic markets and unstable genocidal social communities. African families in need of Jama. African families in need of family. We need each other. Disconnect and the transference of cultural survival knowledge to African youth may be seen as an outcome of distorted content that remains a part of the K-12 curriculum. ACCLAIM centers around the African worldview, allowing for liberation of the African mind via Pan-Africanism. Policies and procedures that are supportive of an African worldview. This is, in terms of this model, it's a Pan-African endeavor because the instructional knowledge and information necessary to actualize policies and procedures that demand usage of the African worldview must include awareness of the value systems of multiple African groups, their languages, traditions, and that spooky word, ritual ceremony practices. And so what we have to do is we have to have that network where we can share the African worldview amongst different places where children learn. I'm gonna just say that because coming from traditional public and charter, I'm a strong homeschool advocate now, and I'm in the process. I might need y'all to help me. I'm trying to convince my daughter to let me homeschool my grandbaby, but she thinks that she's going to miss out on the social piece. But I told her I have that too, so I might need y'all to sign a petition for me today. So Act 2 ACCLAIM, that's what ACCLAIM is. We need Afrocentric instructional leaders must act now to claim the humanity of African people. Currently, this must be achieved via the K-12 curriculum. I put that currently in there. That's key. It don't have to be achieved through the K-12 curriculum. Okay, we have options. Okay, so African youth guided via uses of ACCLAIM become part of a Pan-African existence that is liberating, and that there's a strong possibility they will begin to see their humanity and worthiness as primary agents of a global existence and a necessary part of the oldest human story ever told. And this is the model. This is ACCLAIM. It's an Afrocentric pedagogical leadership tool that manifests Pan-Africanism. In claiming our African humanity as valid and worthy, you must take a Pan-African position because, as Solomon Burke sings, none of us are free if one of us in chains. None of us are free.